Hi, my name is Dr. James Birt, an Associate Professor of Computer Games at Bond University. Although there is broad consensus that education should teach critical thinking skills, the efficacy of common approaches to do so is in doubt. Teaching critical thinking means teaching how to reason effectively about novel problems in a self-directed manner, which is often at odds with classic pedagogical forms and instructive pedagogy. We suggest that video games offer an environment that affords clear goals, novel problems, and agency to students, rendering it suitable for critical problem solving across disciplines. By combining this environment with structured dialogues that emphasise good reasoning, we argue that esports provides an ideal substrate for teaching critical thinking, with the beneficial outcomes not only leading itself to improvements in critical thinking education, but also positive applications at games, assisting the sustainable growth of the esports sector beyond high-performance tournaments and marketing avenues for Generation Z. So what you're seeing here is footage of the latest educational space at Bond University on the Gold Coast, Australia, our esports hub. Bond University has invested heavily into esports, including a dedicated esport facility, which you're seeing here, and partnerships with the Chiefs Esports Club over the next 3 years. The Chiefs is one of the most successful esports brands in Australia, competing at high performance levels for competitive video gaming. Our goal with the Chiefs Educational Partnership is to highlight new and emerging industries to our learners while offering work-integrated learning and affordances of games to our students. However, this application of esports education is often difficult to replicate and very complex to develop, requiring multiple stakeholders and strategic high-level support. So I've been investigating the impact of games in education for about the past 10 years, with a growing reputation both academically and within the media for my work with games technology, serious games, and now esports. So why focus on critical thinking? So we know that critical thinking is vital in education, in that it supports learners to avoid common pitfalls such as seeing only their side of an issue or discounting new evidence that, say, disconfirms your ideas or their ideas, reasoning from passion rather than logic, and failing to support statements with evidence. All of these things are vital for a well-rounded student and global citizen. Critical thinking in Australia education is mainstream, with ever-increasing industry support for soft skills, capacity for graduates to solve problems, plan strategies, and make those decisions and communicate these in a creative manner. However, teaching and assessing critical thinking is often complex, requiring significant assistance for learner self-direction and resource intensive, especially when we're trying to scale this to large remote or online classes, which is the case that we're seeing today with things like the pandemic and moving to online. Often the technology solutions are bespoke. They're custom outcomes for a single classroom that is often expensive to scale. Commercial computer games and esports may offer a solution, but there is concern about esport reputation and sustainability. In our previous research, we proposed a conceptual framework to assess the effectiveness of esports for teaching critical thinking. This used an adapted digital games-based learning framework and learning goals of critical thinking. We supported the framework with a hypothetical esports case study, in this case it was using Rocket League, and a proposed lesson plan. In this research presentation, we wish to discuss the formation of this lesson plan, which has been developed in association with Post at the University of Melbourne and Vincent Tijms at the University of Amsterdam, and the outcomes from a small-scale pilot study run by Nicole Vasilevsky at SAE Quantum in Brisbane, Australia. For the next few minutes, and Nicole will introduce themselves, they'll highlight their experience in the formation of the lesson plan, and they'll discuss the results of the pilot study.
Hi, I'm Post from the University of Melbourne, where I teach and research critical thinking in the Department of Anatomy and Physiology. 10 years ago, I developed a method for critical thinking together with Vincent Tijms at the University of Amsterdam. Our aim back then was to improve the collaboration between students from a wide range of disciplines. How can a biomedical scientist have a good conversation with a philosopher? How can they look at each other's field both critically and with an open mind? This method proved not only useful for an academic setting, In the past years, we've run a similar workshop with more than 100 elite sports coaches at the Olympic Committee in the Netherlands and at the AFL here in Melbourne. Elite sport coaches encounter similar problems to our interdisciplinary students. They receive information from people with varying expertise, from the team psychologist till the game data analyst, and they need to use this information to come to a decision. For example, to decide on a strategic plan for the next game. By developing this workshop for esports, we are combining our ideas from critical thinking in education and sports. As James said before, we believe that esports and Rocket League in particular provide problems that are especially suitable for critical reflections. Problems encountered in esports are novel. Every game you play is unique, and the students are literally at the steering wheel in this game. This means performance depends strongly on critical thinking. Previous studies have found that players use critical thinking skills automatically when they engage in esports, and our workshops aim to develop these skills further. And Nick has actually run these workshops with students and will share his experiences and thoughts now.
Hi, I'm Nicole Vasilevsky and I'm PhD researcher exploring sense of place through augmented reality gamification and service marketing at Bond University, Australia. I was fortunate to implement esports and critical thinking in the classroom on multiple occasions at various higher education institutions. The lesson plan we used evolved through several iterations in order to provide the best learning experience to as many students as possible at the same time. In a nutshell, students first played several rounds of Rocket League and become familiar with the game. The last match was recorded and then used in the critical thinking activities. The whole learning session was split into 4 distinct activities, the next one building on the previous one. The students were presented tasks that they do individually and also as a team. They conduct the activities in a literature-supported way that would teach them how to critically assess, teach them to be better critical thinkers. We only had positive oral feedback and polished some rough edges. As a quick result outlook from the lessons, the initial results showed that there is correlation between the activity and the variance in the measured critical thinking capability before and after the lesson. Maybe the best outcome was when, as an educator, I have observed how the students started confidently applying the newly developed or upgraded critical thinking skills in the following lessons and activities. Teaching critical thinking is not an easy task. Many times it requires a larger shift in the way students think and how they approach the assumptions before the arguments. However, the way we designed the lesson plan is that with minimal training, any educator could implement it in their own classroom. My top tips from running the approach would be making sure that the students have played the sports game before coming to class. Then, don't mix skilled players with novice players because that will just lead to frustration because of how game algorithm is matching the teams with the ranked players, elevating the teams to higher tier matches. And the last thing would be making sure that the students don't rush with the critical thinking activity and complete it properly as per the lesson plan.
Although only at the start of our journey into adapting esports for critical thinking, we believe the positives of exploring commercial video games are really an exciting opportunity for education, and in particular critical thinking education. Emerging technology excites us, but we must remember that technology alone does not form good pedagogy, nor alone does it enable pathways for learners to excel. We must always think before we act and revise our methods and approaches, especially when it relates to innovation, through the lens of research, design thinking, which of course are core tenets of critical thinking. We wish to thank you all for watching this presentation, and please feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in exploring critical thinking within your classroom or indeed your workplace. Thank you so much, Games for Change.